Hi, I'm Tim Janisewski. Welcome to Spotlight Matthew as we are looking at Jesus' fifth and final big block of teaching in this wonderful first gospel. And the subject matter is eschatology, or Jesus and the end of time. And in the segment we're looking at right now, Jesus is teaching his disciples and teaching us today, how now shall we live knowing that we cannot know the day or the hour that the Son of Man will return. Our last devotional study, we looked at his first parable on the subject, the parable of the virgins, where Jesus said we are to be watchful, we are to be prepared, we're to be ready for any moment and any time when Christ the bridegroom comes again in glory to judge the living and the dead. And today, Jesus is going to reinforce the importance of how we are to live each moment on behalf of our Master and our Lord, as we anticipate his return on that unknown glorious day. And this is the parable of the talents. It's rather long, but let's read it in full, beginning in verse 14 of chapter 25. For it will be like a man going on a journey who called his servants and entrusted to them his property. To one he gave 5 talents, to another 2 talents, and to a third 1 talent, each according to his ability. Then he went away. He who had received the 5 talents went at once and traded them, and he made 5 more talents. So likewise he who had 2 talents went out and made 2 more talents. But he who received the 1 talent went and dug a hole in the ground and hid his master's money. Now, after a long time, the master of those servants came and settled accounts with them. And he who had received the 5 talents came forward, bringing 5 more talents. Master, you delivered to me 5 talents. Here are 5 more made for you. His master said to him, Well done, good and faithful servant. You've been faithful over a little. I'll set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. And he also, who had made 2 talents, came forward, saying, Master, you delivered to me 2 talents. Here, I have made 2 more. And his master likewise said to him, Well done, good and faithful servant. You've been faithful over a little. I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. But he also, who had received the 1 talent, came forward, saying, Master, I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you do not sow, and gathering where you scattered no seed. So I was afraid. I went and hid your talent in the ground. Here, take what is yours. But his master answered him, You wicked, you lazy servant. You knew that I reap where I have not sown, and I gather where I have not scattered seed. Well, then you ought to have invested my money with the bankers, and at my coming I should have received what was my own with some interest. So take the talent from him and give it to him who has 10 talents. For to everyone who has will be given more, and he will have abundance. But from the one who has not, even what he has will be taken away. And cast that worthless servant into the outer darkness. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Wow, what a great and stirring parable. Of course, Jesus gives the picture of a master going away on a trip, again entrusting to his servants the responsibility over his estate. And the first one, he gives 5 talents. That's the equivalent of 100 years of wages to a day labor. The second one gets 2 talents. That's the equivalent of 40 years of wages to a day labor. And then 1 talent would be a much lesser amount, 20 years for a day labor, but still all fairly responsible, sizable amounts of money. Now here's the key. The 5 talent, the 2 talent, and the 1 talent man, they all had fiduciary responsibility over what had been entrusted to them by the master. And that's to say that at every turn, they were charged to do with their talents what the master would do with them were he there. They were to act as the voice of the master, doing the bidding of the master. They were not to do their own bidding in the way they wanted to do it. No, their thought was to be, if the master were standing by my side, what would he say and what would he do? and that's what I'm going to say and do until he returns. Well, the first one, he is confident that the master's will is that he take the 5 talents, go out and trade and multiply it, and he does just that. It turns into 10 talents. Likewise, the second man, the 2-talent man, he gets it. The master would have me take his talents and go out and trade, do my best to multiply what is his. Out he goes, and he succeeds. And in both of those cases, the master returns, and he says, well done. You hit it out of the park. I'm going to give you more responsibilities. You are the kind of man I want to have around taking care of my assets. And then he says, enter into the joy of your master, which simply means let's party together. And that's what they do. Servant 1, servant 2, master, hoo-wah, party together. But then there's the third of these servants, and he buried the talent in the ground and said he was afraid. But here's the telling thing. When the master questions him about it, he says, verse 24, Master, I knew you were a hard man, reaping where you do not sow and gathering where you do not scatter. And so I hid your talent here. Take what belongs to you. And the master is infuriated with him. Why? Well, it's because the man has implicated and self-indicted. He says, you knew what I'm like. You know that I'm the kind of person who would multiply my money. I'm the kind of person who would reap a greater benefit than what I currently have. The first servant got it and went and applied it in the way I would have applied it and doubled my money. The second guy did the same thing. You knew that's how I roll and that's how I operate, and yet you went and buried my money in the ground? Are you kidding me? You yourself have said that you know that that's not the way I would have had you operate. And so the master then turns and says, take the 1 talent from him and give it the 10-talent man. He's going to know what to do. He knows what I want done, and he will operate with fiduciary responsibility with that which I entrust to him. So what's the lesson for us? Well, it's pretty obvious. Jesus is saying to us that we likewise are to operate with fiduciary responsibility, to do what he as the master would have done. You know, I think of this illustration-wise in terms of financial planners. You know, there are 2 kinds of financial planners. One financial planner has fiduciary responsibility, which means that financial planner must do what is in the client's best interest no matter what. And if they don't do what's in the client's best interest and it's discovered, they are legally responsible and indeed will be in trouble with the law for not doing so. But then there's a second kind of financial planner that works on what's known as suitability. Suitability simply means I have to do what is suitable for my client and perhaps equally suitable for my interests as well. Well, we see what has happened here. Servant number 1 is acting as a fiduciary, doing the bidding of the master. Servant 2, fiduciary, does exactly what he knows that the master would want done in the master's best interest. But number 3 is suitability. It's more suitable to me that I bury it in the ground than get out and go for it with my 1 talent. And friends, even as it is true, if you ever engage a financial planner, please do check to make sure you're with a fiduciary, not a suitability, one who will act on your best interests, not on what's suitable in his or her eyes. But likewise, we're servants of God. And do we operate in our daily walk of faith on a suitability level, what's good for us but suitable for God? Or do we operate on a fiduciary level, not asking what we want or what our will would be, but what is in the best interest of God and God's best purposes? And we will be held responsible before God, not for doing what's suitable, but for doing what is fiduciarily on the best interest of God in thought, word, and deed. That's what Jesus is telling us. That's how we are to live as we anticipate the return of the Son of Man on a day and an hour we do not know. And if we are living that way, friends, we are forever ready. That's Spotlight Matthew for today. Like us on Facebook, share us with others. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll talk to you next time.